So the first thing I want you to look at is, and think about is this. We just did 7.3, and 7.3 says, okay, I'm factoring by grouping, or actually I'm factoring by finding the GCF. So remember when you learned how to simplify a fraction in 4th grade, your teacher said, okay, now that I taught you how to do it, that is fair game on every single assessment you take. You have to reduce every single answer, right? That's the case with this. Now that I've taught you how to pull a GCF out, that is the first thing you're going to look for. Okay? So you have to pull a GCF out if you see it. So the first thing I want you to write is factoring by grouping applies to when you have 4 terms in your polynomial. And if I were to say, this is the type of problem we're going to be doing today, if I were to give you 9x cubed plus 15x squared, somebody from first hour remembered this, and I was so pleased. What is that form? The way it's written is standard form, right? Standard form of a polynomial means the highest exponent, then the next lowest, then the next lowest, and then the constant at the end. Okay? So those are the 2 things that I want you to write here that factoring by grouping is. You have 4 terms. It only works with 4. It doesn't work with 3. Okay? And it's in standard form of a polynomial. Okay? So guess what? If it's not in standard form, then you need to put it in standard form, right? So we'll do one like that in a little bit. So let's talk about what we look at here. So the first thing I'm doing now, every single time, is do I see a GCF of 9x to the third, this, and that? Well, first of all, that doesn't even have an x. So I know right off the bat I can't pull any x's out. Does 9 and 15 and 6 and 10 all have something in common? No. So I can't pull any GCF out, which means start the problem right away. So what does start the problem mean? To start grouping, you're going to group, this is why they call grouping, the first 2 terms together, and then you're going to group the last 2 terms together with parentheses. Meaning, now be very careful and notice what I did. What did I leave in the middle of the 2 parentheses? The plus sign. Okay, which is kind of weird, I know, because I've always said, hey, that plus is really not a plus. It's saying that 6x is positive, and that's still true. But so that's the first thing you're going to do if there's no GCF. Just follow me today. I promise you this is not hard. Okay? Then I just taught you how to pull out the GCF. You got to do that twice. You got to find the GCF of this parenthesis. You got to find the GCF of this parenthesis. So what is the GCF of that right there? A 3 and an x squared. So pull out the GCF of that and then do what I taught you how to do, meaning put what's left. Literally 7.3 is buried right deep into this problem. So what would I need to multiply this by to get that? A 3 and an x. And because I didn't have to pull out a negative, that plus is not going to change. And then 5. Okay. Next, whatever sign you put in the middle, bring it down. So if there's a plus in the middle, bring the plus down. Do it again. Pull the GCF out of the second set. What does a 6x and a 10 have in common? A 2. And then, what's left? What? 2 times, yep, a 3x plus 5. Now stop and look at what you have. Do you notice anything odd?
They look the same.
Not just that, they are the same, meaning what was left over. So guess what? This is all about GCFs. Pull a GCF out again. So what is the GCF? What do they have in common?
Everything.
A 3x plus 5, right? So watch what I'm doing. I see that these parentheses match, which, by the way, they better every single time. Then pull that GCF out, and this is the cool part. Are you ready? Watch it. It's pretty cool. This is what I call the leftover. What's the leftover? No, you can't add those. What's the leftover? A 3x and a? There, I just factored it. Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's stop and let this sink in for a minute. Right, that's it. Okay, so now watch. Hold on, though. So I grouped them. Well, first of all, I looked for GCF. There wasn't any. So I grouped the first two, grouped the second two. Make sure they're in standard form. Find the GCF of this. It's like two mini problems in one. Then, what you're going to notice is that after you pull the GCFs out of each, what's in the parentheses had better match. If it doesn't, you screwed something up. And then you go back and fix it. Then you pull the GCF of this out. So if I have to color code it, the GCF of this is that, and then the leftover makes up your second set of parentheses. Okay? So now, here's what I said about getting a 4 on every single factoring test you take. Because right now, I feel pretty confident about that. How can I guarantee it's right?
Do it the other way.
You do it back like you did in 7-2. Remember how I taught you how to multiply two polynomials? Or two binomials? You double distribute. Hey, let's distribute it and see if I get that. So, 3x times 3x squared. 3x times 2. 5 times 3x squared. And I know it's a little out of order. But addition is commutative, so it doesn't matter. And what's 5 times 2? Does this match that? Yes. I mean, yes. Yep. And then, so this does match that. So I know I factored it correctly. That is factoring by grouping. Okay. Let's do another one, though. So that's our first example. Okay. Because you know I start you off simple, and then sometimes crazy things happen. There's going to be a minus sign coming up. Yep. And that does put a little twist on it. Okay. Step 1. Do you see a GCF? Is there anything that these 4 terms have in common other than 1? No. Because doesn't every term have 1s in common? Yeah. So there's no terms in common. So I'm going to go right to it. I am literally just going to go right to group. I'm going to do 2 mini problems. I'm going to pull the GCF out here, pull the GCF out here. Okay? But, so what does this have in common? A 2 and an R squared. What's left after that? An R minus 7. So this is the first thing weird that happens. I go to pull the GCF out of R minus 7 and people say there isn't one. There's always one. It's just what? 1. The GCF of what do a 7, negative 7 and an R have in common? So second thing to remember is whatever sign's there. And when there isn't really a GCF that's visible, then you just put a 1. And what did I say about your parentheses after you pull the GCFs out? They had better match. And in this case, they do. Now, what's the GCF of that whole row? An R minus 7. And then, absolutely. Good, Lennon. And that's your leftover. Your leftover makes your second set of parentheses, a 2R squared plus 1. If I wanted to make sure I'm right, double distribute, and I guarantee you, if you do it right, you'll get that, okay? If you have these parentheses reversed, if you have 2R squared plus 1 first, and then R minus 7, is it wrong? No, it's commutative. I don't care the order. Just have each parenthesis be exactly that, okay? So that's the general gist of it. Let's do one with a minus in the middle because we know minus always means something opposites going down. So let's look at this one. 49R cubed minus 42R squared minus 28R plus 24. Okay? Now you think, I know. That's good that you're looking though. I want you to just look and kind of maybe take a note of that. Do they all have a GCF? And I'm going to show you something in a minute. Unless you're really, really you learn those multiplication facts when you were in 3rd grade and they've stuck with you and you don't even have to stop and think about it. You know, if you know GCFs, you could look at that and go, okay, that's 7, that's 8. You know, there's no GCF. So go. You literally start right away. So you're going to pair these 2 and you're going to pair these 2. You're going to pull the GCF out of each. When I pull the GCF out, here I get this. What's left over? 7R squared times what? 7R. Another 7R. I didn't pull out a negative, so this doesn't change, and this is going to be 6. Good so far? Okay, watch, because this is a little bit different. When that's a minus there, what did we learn about when you factor out a negative? What does it do to the signs on the inside when you factored a negative out? It changed it, didn't it? So what does a 28R and a 24 have in common? A 4. And then this is going to give me my 7R. And now look, I know that this parenthesis needs to match this parenthesis, and this parenthesis is a minus 6. Didn't I say when you pull a negative out that changes anyway? So that's why it ends up matching. Now, warning, like if I could put a neon flashing sign on this that says beware, there are fences that have beware of dog, beware of negatives, or actually beware of this, because I'll have kids who heard me say those parentheses need to match. Well, guess what? What if they did this? What if they pulled the GCF wrong out here? And then they know it needs to match, so they just make it match without checking to make sure. Do you see how that could go wrong? So always check to make sure that they match and that they're correct. Okay? So don't just ever copy this down because that's here based on that. Yeah.
But if I know it's right, like if I know 7.
But some kids turn in tests and they think they're right. Otherwise, they wouldn't turn it in. But they're wrong because they made a simple oopsie. And if you make an oopsie here, then you're going to, you know what I mean? So just be careful of that. If you're confident, that's one thing. But all right, so then I have a 7R minus 6. And what's my leftover? 7R squared minus 4. And that is your answer. If you double distribute those out, you will get that. Okay? Are you with me on that so far? Because now I'm going to kick it up one little notch here. Actually, no, what we're going to do, the negative did change. It changed that plus to a minus, because a negative 4 times a negative 6 gives you a positive 24. So that negative times that negative, that's why that has to change. You're distributing that negative again because it's kind of like you're pulling it out. Yes, okay? All right, just try this one on your own real quick. 32v cubed. By the way, what do you notice first of all, right off the bat? It's not in standard form. Well, it's a good thing that addition is commutative and all of these terms are movable. As long as you move each bubble, meaning if you're going to move that 40v, you got to move the negative with it, right? So before you could even do this problem, put it in standard form, try it, let me know when you get an answer.
Wait, you have to put it in standard form for this to work?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. So you have a little pre-work to do there before you can even get into that. What's that? Because there's no GCF here. I'll give you time to work it out. I'm just going to rearrange it for you. Okay, with me so far? Pull each of those GCFs. What's left here? Keep going if you need to. Just don't look up until you need to. Okay. Is that what you guys got? Yes. Or close to it. So, I just wanted you to be able to do one on your own. Okay, ready now? Because we're going to do the second part of these notes, and it's actually pretty easy. So, you like options, right? We all like options. If we go home after school and we have to do a bunch of chores, would you rather do the dishes or the laundry? Your parents let you pick? Then great. At least you have an option. So, I'm going to give you options right now, okay? So, in this last part of our notes, I want you to write with a GCF, okay? Because as I look at this problem, 6b to the third plus 15b squared minus 30v minus 75, okay? There are two kinds of kids. The kind of kid who could look at that right away and go, boom, the GCF of all four of those is boom, and know it. And there are some kids who would look at it for 5 minutes and go, I don't know what the GCF of those are, okay? So how many of you right away knew what the GCF of all four of those was? Then your best bet, dealing with these bigger numbers, is what did I say? If there's a GCF, it's the first thing you should do if you can figure it out. So what do all these have in common? A 3. And if you know that, your best bet is to pull that GCF out right away and be done with it. Okay? If you can't, I'm going to show you the other way, yep? So I pulled a 3 out. The first thing I'm going to do, because this is where everybody in FlexPace had to do retests, is that 3 is now part of your answer. You're still going to have your 2 parentheses, but once people pull the GCF, that's like they forget about it. You can't just forget about it. It's part of your answer. Okay? So I have my answer all ready and set. I got my 3 there. And now I have to figure out, first of all, what's left once I pulled that 3 out. And then I do the problem like I just taught you. So what would go here to multiply to give me that? What would go here? It's kind of nice when you don't have a variable pulled out, right? Because nothing changes. And then a what? Okay, so now, this is a little weird. If you're going to pull the GCF out right away, then you kind of just have, it's like this 3 is in the way here. Go ahead and ignore it now and just make your 2 parentheses from there and do the problem the way we did all the others. So watch. What is the GCF of that set of parentheses? A v squared. What's left? A 2v plus 5. Bring that minus down. What's the GCF here? Between 10v and 25. So pull that out. What's left? Meaning, what would I need to multiply that by to get that? A 2v. And when you pull a negative out, what does that do to this middle sign? Changes it, which is a good thing, because I know it needs to match this one. So that's also plus 5. And because I already put my GCF down as part of my answer, I don't have to worry about forgetting it. And so now what's the GCF here? 2v plus 5, and then what's the leftover? V squared minus 5. That is your answer with 3 being a part of it. So, that's option 1. Get the GCF out of the way right from the get-go.
Why do you have to make it 2 separate parentheses? Why can't you just...
Because it was this binomial that you multiplied by this binomial to get that. These are factors. Just like when I factored 12 as 1 times 12 and 2 times 6, these are each factors of that product. These are each factors of that product. That's all. Okay, option 2. For somebody who looks at this problem and says, I don't know what the GCF of all those numbers is, then guess what? Just do it. Just go right away and start by saying, okay, I'm just going to do the problem the way Ms. Z taught me to. I'm going to pretend like I know nothing about a GCF. So I'm going to group it and group it. I'm going to pull the GCF of this set out, which is going to give me what? What's left? 2v plus 5. This minus comes down. What's the GCF of 30 and 75? It's more than 5. 15. We'll talk about what happens if you didn't realize that. 15 times what is going to give you 30v? Good so far. Well, I know 15 times what's going to give me 75. It should match this. But because this is a negative, what happens here? Okay. Now watch. What's my GCF now? And this right here is why half the kids in FlexSpace had to retake it. Because they put that as their answer. And what do you notice is wrong about it? If the purpose of 7.3 and 7.4 is pull a GCF out, your answer can't have anything with a GCF in it. Anybody looking here? What's still in there? A 3. Oh, you mean the 3 that the other people pulled out from the beginning? Yes. So your option 2 is don't pull the GCF out of the beginning. Pull it out at the end. So this 3 still gets put up front. It doesn't belong with this parenthesis. It just belongs at the beginning of the answer. So what's left after you pull this 3 out of here? A v squared minus 5, which is exactly what we got here. We just got it 2 different ways. So I had FlexSpace kids turn in a bunch of problems with that as their answer. Do you understand what I mean? If you don't recognize from the very beginning, maybe there's huge numbers. Maybe I give you numbers that are, way bigger than you can find the GCF for. Would you rather find the GCF of these 4 or these 2? Do you see how it's a little easier? But the danger in this is if you wait till the very end, you might forget. Pull GCFs out every time you can. Do you understand? Okay. That is factoring by grouping, and that is something that you're going to need to know how to do in 7.5. So, what time do we have until? Okay. Yeah, and that's really it. So, I had a stack of papers somewhere. Here they are. This is not. I have plenty of time because I don't have the test for this set until Monday. Today's Tuesday. I've already taught you 7.3 and 7.4. Because Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday out next week is what? MSAT, you're testing in your first hour. And Tuesday's math. Wednesday is backwards. Tuesday's English. Wednesday's math. Thursday is science, social studies. So I won't see you 3 days next week, which kind of sucks. So if we practice 7.4 today and tomorrow and Thursday, you're going to be like, oh my God, no, I don't do it. If we take the test Friday, then we'll figure out what to do. So I'm going to give you all hour tomorrow to work on this, which means if you don't take it home and you don't finish it, that's okay, because I kind of have an extra day to spare in here, okay? So if anybody needs, if you're absent, you want some help on the GCF, just see me.